As I said, 5% growth in FY21. What's the outlook from here on? Can you do double-digit growth in terms of revenues? And also, the acquisition, Personiv, I think. So it hit an annual run rate of around $30 million. Where do you scale this business to in the coming year?
Very good morning to you as well as all your viewers. Thank you for having me. Yeah, this quarter was very strong, continuing with the momentum that we have seen in Q3 also. And we closed the quarter with $63.8 million and the year with $210 million about. We still are seeing some growth. So we anticipate some amount of growth in near term. However, as you would have seen with other companies also, that there was a pent-up demand which unfolded in H2 of last year. And that way, that kind of sequential growth momentum is hard to maintain, but we do see some modest amount of growth in near future. The only headwind on the margin side will be the wage hikes that will be effective 1st April for our global staff. And coming to Personiv acquisition, I think, we acquired them at a kind of when they were suffering from COVID impact, just like everybody else in the industry because of supply constraints. And since November, December timeframe, the trajectory started moving up. And that's why in Q4, we saw their annualized run rate for Q4 moving to upwards of $30 million, which is in line with what we expected when we did the acquisition. Keep in mind that Personiv business was flat prior to our acquisition. So any amount of growth in that business will be a plus.
Okay, getting back to the question, Mr. Gupta. For FY22, double-digit revenue growth, is that on the cards? And also your margin, on the margin front, you're doing around 27-28% approximately. You yourself admitted that, yes, wage hikes will come about, but there are various cost-cutting measures as well that have been worked out. How much of that is lasting? And where do you see the margins go to? Because I have a brokerage, Edelweiss, who's saying that your margins can go in that range of from 28 to around 30%. Do you think that's possible?
All of that will depend upon how much of offshore growth we are able to pull from here on. The numbers that you see for Q4 are fair representation for our combined business with Personiv. The only new thing will be the wage hikes that will be impacted. Post that, the margin trajectory will move up provided, we see continued amount of offshore growth, which we have seen up until Q4. But, we are talking about 6 months or 9 months out, which is a little hard to predict.
All right. So in that note as well, taking that forward, how much would the wage hike be in this year? What would the impact of that be on your margins? And as far as offshore and onshore is concerned, what's your revenue mix right now? What's the growth rate? How is that likely to pan out going forward?
So wage hikes impact could be about 200 bips on EBITDA level. And wage hikes are pretty normal in terms of, mid single digits. Depending upon geography, it can, move up or down. And sorry, what was your other question?
The other question was with regards to offshore and onshore, what kind of growth do you project going forward? And more importantly, what's the mix right now? Where is it likely to be?
Yeah, so with Personiv addition, offshore mix increased because almost entire of Personiv business was offshore, done from India and Manila delivery-wise. And if you exclude that, our onshore-offshore mix was about 25% onshore, excluding Personiv, and it remains at that level. In terms of growth of onshore versus offshore business, up until now, at least in the last 6 to 9 months, we have seen offshore growing, slightly stronger than onshore. And even at this time, we see that that trend is there.
Right. Mr. Gupta, your cash on books is close to around 650, 700 odd crores. That's a little over 10% of your current market cap. Street would like to know what's the plan. Are you building a war chest for some acquisition in the near future? Or would you like to return it to the shareholders at some point in time in this year itself? If acquisitions, then what are the spaces you're looking at?
So there are no surprises. We have a consistent way of giving cash back to shareholders, as you would notice from last 3 years of history. And that will continue as and when the opportunity arises. And in terms of acquisition, I mean, we have done one in last fiscal. And however, we continue to look for newer acquisitions. And as and when something compelling comes through, we will not hesitate. Obviously, the sizes will be modest, like you have seen in the past. If at all any opportunity comes, we will filter by that also.
All right, Mr. Gupta, but getting back to the question on revenue growth, you said a modest growth. Could you quantify it? Give us a range at least. The street is excited because of that, right? So they'd like to know at least a range in terms of revenue growth, as well as the EBIT margins. You've given us the factors in terms of the wage hike could have a bit of an impact of 200 basis points or thereabouts. But there are other factors as well at play. So a rough number in terms of a margin band as well as a revenue growth band.
Despite wage hikes in near term, we should be able to maintain, 30% or thereabouts EBITDA. And in terms of, growth in FY22, keep in mind that FY21, at least on an organic basis, did suffer in the first part. So there is a natural growth that you will see because of the base effect. But I was referring to modest growth in terms of sequential based on our last 2-3 quarters of history. That kind of percentages were more of an anomaly than natural demand trend that we are seeing.
All right, and finally, before we let you go, I mean, we do understand that any growth that you get in Personiv and all the other acquisitions would be positive for you. But the organic growth itself was strong, 6.3% quarter on quarter. Going forward, every quarter, what's a sustainable number? Primarily because you said that the last half of, or the second half of FY21 was impacted by some pent-up demand.
Yes. Not impacted. It benefited from pent-up demand. So that's what I was referring to, that those numbers of 5-6%, were because of some amount of pent-up demand, and those are not sustainable. But in the same breath, I'm also saying we are seeing some amount of growth. So in that sense, it will be modest.
So 2 to 3% quarter on quarter sustainable?
So I would refrain from giving any number. The trend is positive, but the past is not reflective. I will leave it at that.
All right, Mr. Gupta, thanks a lot for that. The street really likes your performance. And like you said, the trend is positive. So we'll keep an eye out on that as well. The stock locked in upper circuit. But that's about today. In the last 12 months, it's been a near 4-bagger as far as eClerx Services is concerned.